The time for silence is over.
Without any evidence to support it.
There is not a scintilla of evidence that this is true.
I have not seen the proof.
Have we seen proof of voter fraud at this point?
I have not seen the proof.
Have you seen any evidence of fraud occurring in your state?
Without any evidence to support it.
I have not seen the proof.
The ballots are out of control.
I have not seen the proof.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that.
Get rid of the ballots. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Remember that.
Get rid of the ballots.
Remember that.
Get rid of the ballots.
Remember that.
Get rid of the ballots.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
There is not a scintilla of evidence that this is true.
I have not seen the proof.
Get rid of the ballots. Get rid of the ballots. Get rid of the ballots.
You'll never know who the winner is, but the winner's going to be me. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
You'll never know who the winner is, but the winner's going to be me.
It'll be the greatest rigged election in history. It'll be the greatest fraud ever perpetrated. Get rid of the ballots. Get rid of the ballots. Get rid of the ballots. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of the day, where proof is demanded and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition. Hello and welcome to The Left Speaks. My name is Chris. I'll be your host today. Today is Valentine's Day, February the 14th, 2021. 1 month and approximately 1 week removed from the impeachment. Or excuse me, 1 week removed from the insurrection. Trump was just acquitted by the Senate with the complicity and help of 43 Republican senators, all Republican, 7 switched over, and decided to vote in favor. We're going to go through that reaction, what happened, why ultimately many of the Republicans chose or used as an excuse to vote against impeaching Donald Trump, or upholding the impeachment, I should say, and why they voted to acquit him. We're going to go through why that was wrong and a tragic miscarriage of justice, and unfortunately, how this sets up the United States government at a very grave risk of this occurring again in the future. I've said before, privately, I don't know if I've ever said it publicly, that I don't consider Donald Trump specifically to be the threat, although he was in this instance. I consider the threat to be somebody that's younger, smarter, and better at planning to use this as a precedent to attempt to try this again. What we saw was completely unacceptable. Sorry, I had to set that countdown timer. What we saw was completely unacceptable. We saw a sitting president at the time of the United States of America calling our elections fraudulent claiming that the election was stolen, going 0 for 65, 67 in court. I've lost count, trying to prove those charges in front of judges that were Democrats, in front of judges that were Republicans, in front of judges that were appointed by the man himself. We've seen the results of that now with the two voting systems, the two computer companies that supplied the voting systems, suing the ever-loving hell out of the attorneys Trump had hired for defamation because they couldn't prove any of this stuff. And we're going to dive into that here in a minute as well. Not only suing the individual attorneys, but also the conservative media outlets that had a hand in spreading this lie. I think we're close to about $4 billion in damages that combined these two companies are seeking now. But again, we're going to dive into that in a minute. We've also seen a sitting U.S. president, again at the time, thank God he's gone, encourage and tell his supporters to march down to the United States Capitol on the same stage, on the same microphone as his own personal attorney, who had just spoken to that same crowd, saying basically that if democracy doesn't work, we should, quote, try to have trial by combat, close quote. And we wonder, how could this have happened? Who could have foreseen that a bunch of Americans, a bunch of American citizens who were told over 100 times by the president himself since the election that the election was fraudulent, that there was massive multi-statewide conspiracies going on to steal this election. Who could have guessed what would happen if Donald Trump told them all to show up on the 6th of January when Congress was going to certify these election results, and then told them to march down to the Capitol? Who could have imagined that this would have resorted into violence? Who could have imagined that telling the Proud Boys, a new fascist organization, to stand back and stand by, and being unable to consistently condemn white supremacy and white nationalism in this country, all groups that advocate for using violence in pursuit of their political aims, who could have imagined that instead of disavowing them, telling them to stand by and stand back, and then telling everybody who buys into your lies about election fraud, again, massive, multi-statewide, dozens of counties, hundreds of polling locations across all of these counties. Who could have guessed that telling all of these people over and over and over again that their election was stolen from them, that their vote didn't matter, that American democracy was at threat, at risk, and that they had to stop the steal? Who could have imagined that telling all of them to show up on the 6th of January, the one day where Congress was going to certify the results of that election, might pose a risk? And who could have imagined that telling all those same individuals, the ones who bought your lies and then traveled to Washington, D.C. on the date that you set, and then listened to speeches advocating for violence from your political supporters, who could have imagined that telling those people in that crowd that marching down to the Capitol would resort in violence? Anybody could have imagined that. anybody who paid attention, anybody who looked at the people he was talking to. The Proud Boys, the white supremacists, the QAnon conspiracy theorists that think that all Democrats are pedophiles, stealing adrenochrome from children for their satanic rituals. The ones who buy every lie you sell and don't bother to look at any of the evidence. The ones who think that somebody telling them a story is the same thing as evidence. Those were the people in the crowd. Those were the people Trump was specifically addressing. So yeah, if you tell me that I can talk to that crowd and they're going to believe anything that I say, maybe telling them that their democracy was stolen, that their vote didn't matter, and that it's up to them personally to stop the stealing of American democracy, maybe telling them to march down to the Capitol wasn't such a smart idea. And maybe when you tell them multiple times that they have to fight to preserve their democracy, they have to fight to stop the steal of their votes and to stop the steal of their country, and they have to fight to keep you in office. Maybe when you say that multiple times in that speech, saying the word peacefully once isn't enough. Maybe. Call me crazy. But when you lie to the American public over 100 times, telling them that their election was stolen, call me crazy, but as the President of the United States, some of your supporters just might believe you. Call me crazy, but in every other crime that gets tried in court, you have to present your evidence. And if you want to say, hey, they presented their evidence in this case, just like the OJ trial, and he got let off on a technicality, or they didn't see the evidence. They had over 60 tries in multiple different courts. Nobody was saying he couldn't have his day in court. Hell, he had a lot more than one day. A lot more. And he failed consistently every single time to prove his case. The one case out of everything Trump submitted and filed and sued about related to the election was decided before the election even happened. His one win out of over 60 cases said, hey, in Pennsylvania, the people who observe the folks counting the ballots are currently standing 12 feet away. And we think that's too far. We would like them to be able to move closer. And the judge said, okay, that seems reasonable. Republican observers and Democratic observers can move to within 6 feet because they were both at 12 feet and then they moved to 6 feet. This happened before the counting was done. It doesn't prove a single vote, not one, was incorrectly counted. It doesn't prove a single vote, not one, was fraudulent. It proved that some of the observers must have left their eyeglasses at the house because they couldn't watch from 12 feet away. That's across a bedroom, guys. I can see what my 5-year-old is doing from across a bedroom. But hey, I've got no complaints. If you want to move everybody up to 6 feet, perfectly reasonable to me. The rest of all his wild claims, or the rest of his wild claims from his attorneys, were all dismissed. All of them, every single one. Or they withdrew them. They'd get up and talk a great game during the press conferences. Oh, we've got all this proof of election fraud. We've got this, we've got that, we've got this, we've got that. But when they got in front of a judge and were specifically asked, do you have proof of election fraud here? Well, no, that's not exactly what we're saying. That's when it got dismissed. And you want to know why? Just a wild guess on my end. Because when you get up in front of a press conference, you can pretty much say whatever the hell you want. As long as it gets aired, you can get your message out there. But as an attorney, when you get in front of a judge, your law license is on the line. If you misrepresent the facts, if you lie about what your actual claim is, you can lose your license over that. And that's why these people were just fine and perfectly okay with lying to you and lying to me. Because they didn't have a risk of any consequence, or at least they didn't think they did. But that's why when they had something at stake, when they had some skin in the game, when their livelihood and their license was on the line, if they couldn't prove it, if they couldn't substantiate their claims, if they couldn't provide evidence for what they were saying, that's why they shut up. And out of 50 Republican senators, 50, half the Senate, we had 7 willing to cross party lines. To vote saying Donald Trump was responsible for what happened on the 6th of January, was responsible for the insurrection in the Capitol. That without all these lies about the election, that without telling everybody to show up on the 6th, and that without telling those same supporters who did show up to march down to the Capitol, it would have never happened. And that's the most damning and basic thing here. I have yet to come across a conservative yet. I have yet to come across a conservative who wants to say that Donald Trump bears no responsibility in this. Everybody knows he does. You know it. I know it. They know it. That's why they want to argue about other shit. They want to try to find a way to excuse it, which we'll blow through here in a few minutes. They want to hand wave it away as First Amendment right. They want to say that impeaching a former government official is unconstitutional. They want to say that even though Trump told his supporters to march down to the Capitol, he didn't tell them to march down there and try to find Nancy Pelosi and have her hung. He didn't tell them to march down there and break into the Capitol to try to hang Mike Pence, his own vice president. So what can you do? What can you do? It failed this time. I'm speaking to the people that still think this is okay and that are trying to find excuses for it and are trying to find reasons to continue supporting the Republican Party, and that think that Democrats or socialism are the most dangerous threats to our democracy right now, instead of violence from the right wing of the Republican Party. We survived it this time. First time the United States Capitol has not been under government control, U.S. government control, since the War of 1812. We survived it this time. But look at the precedent you are setting, or have set, now that you have acquitted this former president. You are saying that there are no consequences in the final months of a president's term. That a president can even encourage his own supporters to go take over the Capitol. And what can you do about it if he fails? What if the next guy doesn't fail? What if this becomes the norm, that any president who loses an election decides to say, again without evidence, the election was rigged against me. The election was fake. We've just got to keep this going. We've just got to keep my term in office going until we can have a safe election. And don't you worry about the evidence. I'll tell you when the election is safe. I'll tell you when it's safe for you to vote again, and I'll tell you when it's safe for your vote to be counted. And if it fails, hey, no consequences for me. I'm just going to go down to my resort in Florida or my ranch in Texas or wherever the hell I feel like going. But if it succeeds, I'm just going to keep this chair right here in the White House. And I promise you, I'll keep American democracy safe. Because the majority of the people that voted against me, their vote doesn't count. Because that's how democracy is supposed to work. Republicans have opened a Pandora's box here, and a big one. And I'm seriously scared of where we go from here. Anyway, let's start diving into it, guys. Trump has been joking about not leaving office or making comments about this for quite some time.
In 78 days, we're going to stop the radical left. We're going to win the state of Wisconsin, and we are going to win 4 more years. And then after that, we'll go for another 4 years because, you know what, they spied on my campaign. We should get a redo of 4 years.
Now, that was obviously a joke. So, why do jokes matter? This has been with us since Shakespeare, guys.
You all did see that on the Lupercal, I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition?
It's talking about Julius Caesar. When he was offered the crown to become the first emperor of Rome, it was a test to see how the crowd would react. Somebody came up to Caesar and offered him the crown. He refused. Crowd goes wild. Okay, they're not ready yet. They offer it to him a second time. He refuses again. Crowd goes wild. So let's see how this continues with Trump. And again, the implication is, had the crowd not been cheering when he turned down the extra term or the crown, hey, I guess it's okay then. I should keep the crown.
Under the normal rules, I'll be out in 2024, so we may have to go for an extra term.
Hey, we're going to have to extend my second term because 2026, I'm going to have to extend it for a couple of years. I don't think any of you would have a problem with that. I was going to joke, General, and say at least for 10 or 14 years, but we would cause bedlam if I said, we go to 20, we go to 24. Did you see it? Then it says 28, 32, 36, 40, 44. He's now president for life. And look, he was able to do that. I think it's great. Maybe we'll have to give that a shot someday. So we have 16, we have 20, we have 24. And you know what's very interesting, though? There are really people out there think I'm not leaving. Can you believe it? Hey, maybe that is a good idea. Let's think about it.
Let's just keep normalizing it. Starts off as jokes.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
He told you plain as day before the election occurred. Will you commit to a peaceful transferal of power? Well, we're going to have to see. Excuse me? This is acceptable from a sitting United States president? We're going to have to see about transferring power if I lose the election? And if you get rid of the ballots, there won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. Well, you're right about that, but it'll be the end of American democracy. If the votes no longer matter, if the ballots can just get tossed because of whatever old good reason you can come up with, even if you can't provide any evidence for it, that's not a functional democracy. That's not a democracy. That's not how this is supposed to work. Again, this was before the election. All of it. President for life. Ha 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 ha. No, I won't commit to a peaceful transferal of power. We'll have to see how it turns out. I've been complaining about ballots. Well, shit. Seems like you have a problem with democracy more than anything else. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Democracy does not mean that you get your way. It means that you have a vote, it means that you have a voice. And this time, you lost. That doesn't give you the right to get rid of democracy. Because that means if you do, next time, you won't have a vote. Not one that matters anyway. They might decide to toss yours if you disagree with them. Next time, you won't have a voice. They might decide to get rid of yours if you disagree with them. Just because you didn't get your way, you didn't get your win, doesn't mean that you get to toss democracy. The correct reaction would have been to go out and start organizing for the next election so you could win. Let's go into some of Trump's tweets, and then we've got a caller on the line. What are they trying to hide? They know, and so does everybody else. Expose the crime. Oh for 67. 0 for 67. In front of every kind of judge you can imagine. One's appointed by Democratic presidents, one's confirmed by Republican presidents, and one's confirmed by Trump himself. I thought Trump was a winner. I thought he hired the best people. He won because the election was rigged. No vote watchers or observers allowed. That's a lie. There were tons of vote watchers and observers allowed in every state at all the polling locations. There was one in Georgia where counting went on to about 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and they said people could leave if they wanted to. One. We're not talking about one instance. We're talking about massive, multiple statewide election fraud at multiple county locations, at multiple polling locations. Not one. Vote tabulated by a radical left, privately owned company, Dominion, with a bad reputation and bum equipment that couldn't even qualify for Texas. The fake and silent media, and more. If the media was silent, how do I know that you fell flat on your ass over 60 times in court? How do I know about your one election victory, or victory related to the election, that allowed observers to stand 6 feet closer? Silent my ass. Doing a great job in Georgia. Their recount is a scam, means nothing. Must see fraudulent signatures. Okay, so if it's the machines that are the problem, because they're miscalculating the ballots, which is one of the theories that they floated, Georgia did 2 machine recounts and 1 hand recount. Don't you think that would have shown up? Just maybe in 3 recounts? And if the signatures are the problem, then why before that were you ranting about the machines being the problem? Seems like you're just pulling stuff out of your butt. To me, anyway. He only won in the eyes of the fake news media. I concede nothing. We have a long way to go. This was a rigged election. He referring to Joe Biden. Biden also apparently won in the eyes of the voters and won in the eyes of 60-plus courts. 0 for 67, baby. Because I'm not going to count your one that doesn't even relate to fraud. I'll give you your 6 feet off the top. Just like the courts did. Democrats oppose voter ID laws, auditing the vote, and the Electoral College. Under their watch, election integrity will become a thing of the past. I oppose voter ID laws because everywhere it's been implemented, it seems to disproportionately attack black people and minority voters, which we've done an episode on in the past. Not to mention, to get me behind voter ID, you would have to prove that there's a problem with the current system, which so far we seem to find fraud of 0.000025%. Means the guy walking to the polls next to you to go cast his vote, or your next door neighbor who mailed in their ballot, is more likely to get struck by lightning than they are to commit election fraud. So I don't see a need to fix the current system. Doesn't seem very broken. If you think it is broken, please tell me why you're not also saying we need lightning rods everywhere to protect voters on their way to the polls, since the odds of both things happening seem to be about the same. Actually, excuse me, the lightning is more likely. So if I use your logic, we need to address the lightning first, and then the voter ID. So yes, that's why I oppose voter ID. Number 2, auditing the vote. You audited it 3 times in Georgia. Did you want a 4th, a 5th? Or did you just want to keep doing it until you could find a way to find those, 11,000, 12,000 votes Trump needed? You know, where he called the Georgia Secretary of State and said, hey, all I need is this number of votes. That's all I really want. The Electoral College. Damn right I'm opposed to the Electoral College. The president represents all the people in the United States of America. If somebody gets 5 million, 4 million, 7 million more votes for president, then I really don't care whether those votes came from Oklahoma, Minnesota, or California. Every vote should be equal. Your vote shouldn't count for 25 times what somebody in California's vote counts for just because you live in the state of Minnesota, North Dakota. I personally believe that whoever gets the most votes for president should be president. I also happen to be a fan of democracy, so call me crazy, but whoever gets the most votes should win. I don't care if you live 5 miles across the state line. Shouldn't matter. That has nothing to do with fraud. That has nothing to do with election integrity. Isn't that the point of majority rules? Yes, that is the point. However, we were not set up that way initially because we had to make sure those smaller southern states that had a large population of people who did not count as citizens, slaves, could balance out with the northern states because they were worried about protecting slavery. That's that whole a slave counts as 3/5 of a vote that used to be in the Constitution. We got rid of that part. Now we just need to get rid of the remnants that somehow managed to survive. Roy apparently wants to talk about Joe Biden being a racist. Roy, you're on the air. You may want to mute the stream in the background and just listen on the phone. I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, not a worry.
So what'd you have to say, Roy?
So how can you ignore Joe Biden's history of racism? He was there during the Southern strategy in Congress. He was pivotal to the 94 crime bill and mass incarcerations. He backed the war on drugs. Simply his words. Poor kids are as bright as white kids. Asking a black reporter, are you a junkie, when he was asked if he's had a cognitive test. If that had been Trump, he would have been ripped to shreds. Trump asked a black reporter to set up a meeting with the Black Caucus as a joke. How's this double standard okay?
Over how many years did Joe Biden make his statements?
Over 46 years, he's made statements.
Okay.
Going as recently as last April.
What was the one last April?
He was asked if he had taken a cognitive test, and he replied, are you a coke addict?
And that's racist to you?
He replied to a black reporter. Like I said, if Trump had given that same response, he would have been ripped to shreds. He simply asked one to set up a meeting with the Black Caucus for.
Okay, so let's pretend for a minute that Joe Biden's views over 46 years have not gotten better. Okay? So I'm just going to grant you that tentatively for right now. Has Joe Biden ever called people at a neo-Nazi protest very fine people?
No, but he has defended Republicans in Congress who have.
Has Joe Biden ever personally called neo-Nazis very fine people?
Not to my knowledge.
Has Joe Biden ever been unable to condemn white supremacy or white nationalism?
Yes, in the 90s.
In the 90s, he was directly asked to condemn white supremacy and white nationalism, and he failed to do so.
During the crime bill, he was asked if it had white supremacist roots, and he said no, that it had no impact. That would be racially disproportionate.
Okay, so he was not directly asked if he could condemn white supremacy and white nationalism.
Okay, I'll go with that. We can go by the letter of what you're saying.
Okay. Has Joe Biden ever told a white supremacist / fascist organization to stand back and stand by in case the election didn't go his way?
Just because Trump is worse than Biden doesn't make Biden not guilty of the same types of crime or the same types of racism.
Okay, so now your position seems to have shifted.
It's a false equivalency.
It's not, but we're getting there. Okay, so by your own admission, I think I heard, but clarify for me, that Trump was worse on race issues than Biden. Did I hear you correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Trump is worse. We agree on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
So who were my viable choices for president?
Just because you don't have a choice doesn't mean don't have a good choice doesn't mean you don't have a choice, I guess. But the point is, I didn't come in and say Biden should have beaten Trump. I came in and said that Biden has his own racial baggage that he has to deal with.
I don't think
that giving him a pass on it isn't fair.
I don't know that I've ever given him a pass on it, and I don't know that I would disagree that Biden has some racial baggage. But by your own admission, Trump's was worse by far, I would say, but I am adding the by far because I'm not trying to misrepresent you. And then my choices were either Biden or Trump. Can you agree with that statement?
Vote. No, or you could protest vote.
I could protest vote. Would that vote have been viable? Is there a chance my candidate would have won?
No, but there's a chance that you could have brought about real change. Are you ready to go off rails a little bit?
A little bit, but let's stick to this for a couple more sentences. So if my candidate could not have won, how could I have brought about real change?
How do you think that Trump came about?
I think he co-opted the Republican. I think
the Tea Party got 12.4% of the vote in 2012.
Yeah.
The Republicans adopted the Tea Party along with the entire Southern strategy. And here we are.
So the Tea Party, in my view, co-opted the Republican Party from within. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay, so I'm trying to do the same thing
that's because
from the progressive side with the Democratic Party. Because the Tea Party never stood a chance independently of electing a president.
But the Tea Party still managed to get 12.4% of the popular vote, and the Republicans gobbled up their platform faster than a hungry hippo.
I would agree. They co-opted the Republican Party. Give me just a second. Conundrum, Mr. Trump told them to stand back and stand by. He did not specifically tell them to stand down. You are incorrect. You need to go back and look at the quote. The next day, when he was interviewed in front of his limousine, I forget exactly where it was, then he said that he was basically, and I'm not going to quote directly here, not familiar with the Proud Boys at the time, and they needed to stand down. So he corrected it the next day. However, in a national televised debate, you reach a much larger audience. Stand back and stand by is not remotely the same thing as stand back and stand down. As a former military officer, if I tell my soldiers to stand down, that is one thing. If I tell them to stand by, that is something entirely different. Sorry for the interruption, Roy.
No problem at all. Now, to go back to your choices, Jill Stein was a viable choice, and if she had gotten that same 12.4% of the vote, we'd be seeing an eruption inside of the Democratic Party right now, I believe.
Did Jill Stein win a single state?
Neither did the Tea Party in 2012.
Okay, so neither one of them were viable and both function from within the party, which is what I'm advocating for. The progressives in the Democratic Party have gotten elected. AOC's, Bernie Sanders, the Squad. I can point to multiple election victories that are better on race, I would agree with you, than Joe Biden. But starting a third-party movement and throwing away a vote, which would, by your own admission, not have accomplished anything this term, and allowing somebody who is a much worse racist, again, even if I concede your Joe Biden has race issues point, seems like a very bad decision to me.
If we didn't have the Electoral College, you and I would agree on this point. The Electoral College in your state, your vote doesn't matter anyways. You're going to go New Mexico. That's Republican, right?
I'm in Nevada, but yeah. New Mexico actually voted Democrat, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, but point is, for 80% of the country, our vote doesn't count unless we do something such as a protest vote for a third party. And that's where these parties get their realignment. They start looking to third party momentum for what platforms are going to be next.
I would argue that parties get their realignments from primaries, because that's when the Tea Party started making a massive impact, is when they started running in Republican primaries and primarying the old neoconservative, neoliberal politicians and getting the populist instead. And again, that's what I'm advocating for in the Democratic Party.
With a third party and needed support.
It started out with a non-viable third party, and it learned and grew. I'm advocating for skipping the first step and starting with what worked. I agree with you. The Electoral College should go away, but that's not the system I was working with this election, unfortunately.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, man. It's brave to bring up the Southern strategy. I like that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you much. And it's an important part of our history that we need to be aware of, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely. Take care.
You too. Thank you for the call. Conundrum. Whether he said stand by or stand down, it doesn't matter. Your disdain, referring to me, is due to his choice in words. Yet he asked the moderator what he wanted him to say, and he repeated what the moderator told him to say. And continuing from that into his next comment, they have been civil. I'm enjoying the show. Oh, Fisty Talks said he hopes the conversations have been civil. Fisty, yeah, they have so far. Conundrum, thank you. I appreciate that input. I disagree that stand by and stand down do not matter. That is a very important distinction. And furthermore, this is an ongoing thing with Donald Trump. It's not like this is the first time he had a problem condemning white nationalists or white supremacists. And if you will recall, that was directly what the question was related to. Can you condemn white nationalists and white supremacists and erase any doubt? And he hesitated and wavered and back and forth, and then told him to stand back and stand by. Never once did the word stand down come out of his mouth during that election. And as I've pointed out, from a military point of view, those are very, very, very different things. From a police point of view, those are very, very, very different things. So no, words matter. It's an ongoing thing with numerous politicians, as you admitted in your previous discussion. I assume you're referring to the phone call. The phone call, I conceded the Biden is a racist point to get to the other points, to basically establish that Trump was worse. And as we established with that caller agreed with me that Trump was worse. So I have a choice between worse and not worse. I don't have a choice between perfection and the worst out there. So I'm going to pick not worse every time. I'm not going to let perfection be the enemy of improvement, be the enemy of better. If we were looking for perfection and racial equality in this country before we did anything, I would say we have not achieved perfect racial equality in this country. The stats, when you look at median wealth, generational wealth between whites and minority blacks, when you look at education achievement, when you look at crime, when you look at who's most likely to be shot by a cop, who's most likely to die during an interaction with police, these are all things that point to the fact that we have not achieved perfect racial equality in this country. So I hope you could agree with me on that. So if we waited for perfection before we did anything, that means all of these people would still be in slavery. We can get better without achieving perfection. We can keep aiming for perfection, but we can still make improvements as we go. Fisty Talks, is the distinction you're making based on military experience? I find a lot of people making that distinction are former military. Yes, for me specifically. Overall, in general, it's not the only thing that matters in this particular instance. But yes, I was a former infantry officer in the United States Army, and those two things mean very, very different things. Now, do you have to be military to understand that? No, you do not remotely have to be military to understand that. Any group that advocates for violence in politics which we know the Proud Boys do. Their former founder, Gavin McInnes, stated specifically on the Joe Rogan show that you have to, in order to move up to rank 4, have committed some violent act in support of the cause. This is not just some group of people going out and having beers. That's not what we're talking about here. So when you're talking for a group that organizes itself and advocates for violence in order to achieve its political aims, then yes, telling them to stand back and stand by is very different than telling them to stand down. Mickey, if I'm being told to stand down, I'm lowering my weapons and relaxing a bit. If I'm told to stand by, I'm at attention and waiting for the next order given. Exactly. Fisty Talks, do you think racial equality will ever be that way, especially when identity politics are seemingly causing a race problem? I don't know that identity politics are causing a race problem. I don't know that I would agree with that question. Do I think that racial equality will ever be that way? By that way, I'm assuming you mean perfect. No, I don't think people in general are perfect. I don't think any single one of us is, the walking second incarnation of Jesus Christ or Muhammad come back to earth or whatever religion you ascribe to. That does not mean we cannot continue to aim for perfection and continue to make things better. That is my general point. Conundrum, that is a massive false dilemma. I don't know exactly what you're referring to, Conundrum. I might have missed something there. Nobody is perfect for sure from Fisty. Thank you. I agree with that. We have another caller. Hold on just a minute.
Hello?
Hello, Conundrum. You're live on the air. I'm not sure if you want me to use your real name or not, so it's up to you, buddy.
No, you can use Conundrum. Let me first start off by appreciate the show. I think what you have to say is opened my eyes quite a bit, so I really do appreciate you. So I understand on Twitch these can get hostile, and that's not who I am or no the reason why I'm calling. I am an African American, let me start that off, who did not vote for Trump in the first election. But in the second election, he did convince me that he deserved my vote, especially with the history of Biden, as well as the direction the Democratic Party is going right now. I do have a disagreement when it comes to the left's claims of racism.
Okay.
My disagreement comes from the two evidences that you gave that to support your racist claim for Mr. Trump. Number one, going back to the discussion that we were having prior with the moderator, I'm going to repeat what I said, but whether he says stand back or stand by, that's not the situation, because it seems like your frustration and your claim that that statement is racist is based on you're assuming that that's what he said. If you watch that debate, you'll see that, yes, I believe he hesitated at first, because I do believe he was frustrated at having to say over and over again that he is not for white supremacists and so on and so forth. But as the people were kind of getting louder, he asked the moderator, what do you want me to say? I'm tired, basically admitting, I'm tired of having to say this over and over again. What do you want me to say? And the moderator said, tell them to stand by or stand down, whichever one you said that he said. And then he repeated it. And then he gets bashed for basically in the moment asking, okay, I'm tired of basically saying over and over again, I denounce white supremacy, I denounce this stuff. What do you want me to say? The moderator, which I believe was Chris Wallace, don't quote me on that.
No, you're correct.
Said, tell them to stand by. And that's what he said. And he gets claimed that that was a racist statement. And so I don't see how that's a racist statement where in the moment he was just repeating what the moderator had told him to say.
Okay, so again, even if I grant you that one thing is not racist and could be excused, is that the only thing in Trump's past or in his term as president that he's done or said that could be considered racist?
If you were referring to the Charlottesville incident as well?
Sure. There's dozens, I would argue, but yeah, we can go with that one.
No, I get you. All right, so there's two different directions I can go based on Charlottesville. But with the Charlottesville incident, when I first saw that video, and this was during the time when I really did not like President Trump. I did not like him at all.
Okay.
Hence why I did not vote for him. But during that Charlottesville incident, one thing that I saw repeated over and over and over again on the liberal television shows was, him only saying there are good people on both sides.
Okay.
Now, as I try to get my information from both sides, and I will admit when I'm wrong. And in this situation, I do feel like I was wrong to view Donald Trump as being racist for that statement, because when I watched Ben Shapiro, that's going to be my primary source for this information.
No, you're fine.
When I watched Ben Shapiro, he played the entire video. And in that entire video, he prefaces that statement by saying wait a minute, not the neo-Nazis, not those guys are bad. But then he prefaces it and he goes on by saying, but other than the neo-Nazi, there were two sides to that discussion, and they're fine people on both sides. He prefaced that statement. Go ahead.
I agree with you that he did preface that statement. My question comes in, okay, how many people, personally or otherwise, personally, professionally, whatever the case is, do you know that you would consider very fine people that would attend a rally organized by neo-Nazis, Proud Boys, and KKK?
Yeah, so let me start off by saying this. I am not going to stereotype people based on the group that they're in. I am very hesitant to say that Proud Boys is a racist group. If you look at
Proud Boys didn't attend. They helped organize, and then Gavin McInnes disavowed it because he was worried about coming out where it was. But I don't want you to get too distracted. I asked a pretty specific and straightforward question. Again, personally and professionally, how many people do you know that would be comfortable attending neo-Nazi rallies and KKK rallies and standing next to these people chanting "Jews will not replace us," not chanting it themselves, not a card-carrying member of the KKK or the neo-Nazis, right? But how many people do you know that you would consider a very fine person that would stay there?
Yeah, see, and I can't answer that statement the way you want it to, because you're trying to get me to generalize or to stereotype a person based on the organization that they may be a part of, or in the rally that they went to.
Well, if they're a part of the neo-Nazis, I would hope we could agree that they're not a very fine person.
No, I get that, but the three.
Can we agree on that?
Gave me were not the. Oh yeah, I can agree on that. But the
okay,
three categories you gave me.
Hold on.
Okay.
So we're agreeing that the organization you belong to does matter, which is one of the things you just said you didn't want to generalize.
Yeah, but not necessarily. So I want to, if you let me finish, not necessarily, because the three groups that you gave me, I doubt that those are the only three groups represented. And now when I want to discuss the specific groups that I would show you that I wouldn't want to stereotype Proud Boys, you showed me that, no, you don't want to go down that path.
Well, the Proud Boys, like I said, disavowed that rally. That's the difference. But we had a torchlight rally organized by neo-Nazis chanting "Jews will not replace us" and "blood and soil."
Yeah, but when I was, like I said, I was not at the rally, so I'm assuming that I'm going to agree that maybe that stuff happened. But with the rally that I watched on CNN, or the information I saw, not everyone at that rally was a part of a neo-Nazi or KKK group.
I didn't say they were. I asked how many people you knew that you would consider good people that would be comfortable staying around those people as well. Because let me be very clear. I don't care whether it's a political thing or not. If I go down to the mall to take a picture with my 5-year-old and Santa Claus, and there's a bunch of neo-Nazis there chanting "Jews will not replace us," I'm going to find a different damn mall. I'm not standing in line with them. I'm not associating with them. I'm certainly not joining the same cause that they are. Now, let's say this protest in Unite the Right in 2017 was about the removal of a Confederate statue, okay? I'm originally from Louisiana. I can understand Southern pride and history. I can see how Confederate statues could be offensive to black people in the South. I can see both sides of this, okay? The person who says that they want the statue to stay up isn't necessarily a racist, and I'm not saying that they are. The person who says that they want the statue to come down isn't necessarily saying that they hate the entire South. Okay, these are two different divergent viewpoints. I get that. Okay, my point is, if I pack up my family and I go say, "Hey, we're going to protest saying we want this statue to stay up," okay, if we get out of the car and I see a bunch of people saying "gas the kikes," which I have on video and I'll be happy to play for you in a minute, I see a bunch of people chanting "blood and soil," I see people in neo-Nazi regalia, I see people in Klan hoods and white robes, okay? Even if I want the statue to stay up, I'm getting back in my car and I will pick a different day to protest because I'm not associating with those people. And from my point of view, okay, and then I'll let you talk. I apologize. I know I'm going on for a minute here, but I'll let you have a good long intro.
No, this is your show, buddy. You do what you do. This is your show.
From my point of view, if you stay there and I can't distinguish between you and the neo-Nazis, that's on you. That's not on me. I don't know a single person I would consider a good person or a very fine person that is staying in that crowd, because the people that I know that I consider good and very fine people don't associate with neo-Nazis and Klansmen. Period.
Okay. So can I show you where I disagree?
Certainly.
Okay. So I believe truth is truth no matter who says it. I do believe that in the politics of America, especially when you have a two-party system, you're going to have people who agree, who fight for the same things you fight for, who are evil people. An example, as a person who voted for Trump, and this is one of the reasons why I came over to Trump's side, by the way, when you look at Antifa, when you look at what they were doing in Washington, when you look at the things that, let's say, I understand neo-Nazis get associated with because they're conservatives, but communists get associated with the left. And if you look at the destruction and the damage of communism compared to neo-Nazis, I think that when it comes to communism, particularly Antifa, that they are Marxist organizations, I believe that they're worse off. Now, they're both bad, but they're worse off. But here's the thing. When it comes to what happened with Trump in January 6th, right, when those evil people tried to destroy our democracy, when those evil people won in the Senate and threatened, right? I would go to a rally today with Antifa and protest that being allowed again. Because even though I disagree with Antifa, we and Antifa believe the same thing when it comes to that should not happen in our democracy. And so I do believe that truth is truth no matter who says it. And I do believe that there are things that other people, human beings, we disagree on. And I'm not going to protest with you when it comes to racism and stuff like that, because it's not true. But when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to, certain things that I agree with, then yeah, I'm going to voice my opinions with those people. I think that the danger you make is that, I see this quite a bit with the Democrat Party, and this is one reason why I switched over for this election, is that I can't remember another time, and I'm an African-American who, my family were slaves in South Carolina. I can't remember the last presidential election where the left did not call the Republican that's running for office a racist. I believe you guys have watered down that word so much. And that, to me, now whenever you call a person a racist, let's not forget, I believe it was Joe Biden said that with Mitt Romney, you're going to put, if you elect Mitt Romney, he's going to put y'all back in chains. Let's not forget George Bush after Hurricane Katrina, all the racism calls that he was racist for his handling of Katrina. And so I when it comes to you saying this person is racist and racist and racist, I don't think Democrats even really care that much if they are racist. I think it's become such a normal word for y'all to use when it comes to your opponent that you guys really don't argue or debate. Let me put it this way, that you expect an African-American to hear that word and automatically side with you without looking at the evidence. And that's one thing that really pulled me over to Trump's side, because when I looked at the Charlottesville video, when I looked at the moderating debate, and CNN and MSNBC were saying racist, 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 racist. And when I watched the entire video, I didn't see racist. I didn't see racist. And so, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm against what neo-Nazis, the racism of neo-Nazis. I'm against the racism of the communist ideologies of Antifa, right? But when Antifa says something that I agree with, I'm going to say, hey, dude, no, I agree with you. Even though I wouldn't hang out with you. But dude, I voted for Trump. Let's be real. I'm not going to hang out with Trump, right?
No, fair enough.
But I voted for him.
Okay.
And so I do believe that truth is truth no matter who says it.
Well, there we don't disagree. Okay. I am going to disagree with you that racism isn't a real thing, and I can just point to the fact that you've agreed with the fact that the neo-Nazis and the KKK.
I didn't say Yeah, I didn't say racism is the real thing. I say that you guys use that word so much that there are times when someone does something that isn't racist, but y'all claim it is racist. And my examples are going to be the debate with the moderator with Donald Trump, and then Trump's remarks to the Charlottesville. So I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. Trust me, you're from Louisiana, I'm from Texas. We're very similar. You're from Louisiana and you're in Nevada. I'm from Texas and I'm in Nevada.
All right.
And so we both have experienced the same different types of cultures in the South. So I'm not going to say racism doesn't exist. I just say that you guys call things racist that necessarily is not racist. And I think one thing that can help me out is, what's your definition of racism? And I'll give mine first if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so for me, racism isn't just a dislike of culture, or I think racism historically is the belief that a particular race is biologically inferior to you. They can never be, they're lesser of a human being than you are. To say that you dislike a certain culture, I think that's wrong, because as an African American, I would not want to live in Compton. I'd be real with you. All right, as an African American, you're from Nevada. I'm assuming you're from Vegas.
Yeah, I live in Vegas now.
I would rather live in Summerlin than North Las Vegas. That's not me. That's not because of black people. It's because I disagree with a culture. That culture, I prefer Summerlin's culture. So I don't think a disagreement of culture or dislike of culture means racism. I think racism is the belief that a person is biologically inferior to you, that there is nothing that African American race can do for you to view them as equal, because the color of their skin means that they are lesser than you are. So for me, racism is a biological thing, not a cultural thing, because we all have our cultural biases.
Do you think that the culture in, I don't know, we'll use Compton, for example, is remotely the same as the culture in Houston, Texas for black people, or New York, or Little Jamaica in New York?
And that's why.
Okay, so these aren't just cultural and biological differences we're talking about here that are being justified, right? It's not just we're against black culture because everywhere that there are black people, it's like Compton. You can be against. No. Yeah, it doesn't have to be specifically biological. Is my point.
Okay, so your definition is, it doesn't matter if there's a culture that allows an African American to be a part of that, then I'm not going to like that culture.
My definition, or I think it would be easier for me to give you my goal. My goal would be equality of opportunity for everybody.
Okay.
Everybody has equal opportunity to vote. Everybody has equal opportunity to compete for scholarships. Everybody has equal opportunity for achieving schooling. Everybody has equal opportunity for achieving jobs. Everybody has the equal opportunity for surviving an encounter with police. Everybody has an equal opportunity that if they do die in front of police, they're, equally likely to be armed. Not equality of outcome, because I do agree that individuals can differ. You may be smarter than me, or vice versa. Right. So you may be able to become a neuroscientist, and I may, cap out at being a history professor or something. I don't know. Right. Yeah. But we should both have the opportunity, assuming that we're capable of achieving that. And that's not what I see. Now, do I agree with you to a certain extent that Democrats can jump on the race card too soon? Yes, I do. Okay. Do I disagree with your assessment that Trump holds some seriously racist views? Yes, I seriously disagree with that. I have him, telling the Proud Boys. So the question was asked, can you defend, or, can you denounce white supremacy and white nationalism? Because I'm going to kind of touch on what I think Fisty has been saying in the chat here. It doesn't matter, Fisty, whether the Proud Boys specifically are white nationalists. The questions were asked, and then Trump was asked to denounce the Proud Boys specifically. So at the time of the question, he would have assumed that they were white supremacists or white nationalists. We know this from the interview that was done the next day when he says he was unfamiliar with them, so he can't claim prior familiarity with their policies. The fact that he was unable to denounce white supremacy and white nationalism in that case is a baseline problem for me, okay? Then I can also jump to the Unite the Right comment. Again, these things aren't taken in a vacuum. It's the entire body of evidence. Then I can also point to his tweet of his supporter chanting white power.
Next, damage control at the White House after President Trump retweeted a video showing a supporter making a racist statement. ABC's Rachel Scott is at the White House.
Tonight, the White House is trying to explain why the President of the United States used his enormous platform to amplify this racist message.
White power! White power!
Around 7:30 this morning, the president retweeting this video to his 82 million followers. A man shouting white power in a golf cart displaying Trump 2020 campaign signs. Trump supporters clashing with counter-demonstrators 2 weeks ago at a Florida retirement community called The Villages, according to its news site.
You'll still be praying on November 3rd. Oh, too bad! Too bad! You'll be praying on Nazi!
The president sharing a 2-minute expletive-filled excerpt of the site's video, adding, "Thank you to the great people of The Villages." Senator Tim Scott, the Senate's only black Republican, called on President Trump to delete the post.
I think it's indefensible. We should take it down.
More than 3 hours after posting, he did.
This is really not about the president taking it down. This is about the judgment of the president in putting it up.
In a statement, the White House says the president did not hear the one statement made on the video, adding, what he did see was tremendous enthusiasm from his many supporters. But the president has insisted he keeps a close eye on what he shares.
Did you notice that when you retweeted it?
Yeah, I noticed everything.
As outrage over racial inequality sweeps the nation, the department...
Now, like I said, any one of these incidents individually, I might be willing to concede as an oops moment. But when I combine that with the fact that he was one of the first ones to jump on Obama's birtherism movement, you know, being a secret Kenyan Muslim from not an American citizen, when I jump into the Unite the Right, calling people that associate with neo-Nazis very fine people, people that attend in large crowds with neo-Nazis and Klansmen in their regalia, mind you, it's not like they didn't know who these people were, very fine people. When I point to him tweeting out neo-Nazi, you know, white power stuff, okay, this starts becoming a serious, serious problem and concern on my end, okay? Now, again, to jump to what Fisty just said, I don't think all Trump supporters are neo-Nazis or open racist or even closeted racist. Okay? And I think Trump is plenty fine with saying, hey, I accidentally tweeted out this white power stuff and not denouncing it later. Or, hey, I misspoke here. The problem I have is that the neo-Nazis and the Klansmen and the devout racist, they didn't get denounced. They didn't get told, hey, if you're a conservative, I appreciate the fact that you voted for me, but if you're a neo-Nazi or a Klansman or a white supremacist, you seriously need to work on your views, because I am not a fan of racism. I believe that all people are equal and all people in this country are Americans and all deserve equality before the law. Now, I can do that on a Twitch live stream. Why can't the President of the United States do that in a live televised debate? This is not hard.
So, can I respond?
Yeah, and then I'm going to have to let you go and jump back to chat, but go ahead and wrap up.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So I'm going to agree with you that clip was bad. And when I saw that clip, I okay, that was bad. But for him to come out, he did give a plausible reason why he put that tweet out. All right. I think that, once again, this is another opportunity for you guys to willingly jump on the racist bandwagon. I can look at oh my goodness, my mind just went blank on who the Madam Vice President is. I just can't believe I just forgot that.
Kamala Harris.
Oh my goodness, thank you. When I look at Kamala Harris's conviction record when she was in California, the vast majority, there was a higher rate of African Americans being sent to prison. But I'm not going to say it's a racist that she put those people to prison because of racism. I'm saying that no, because I think she's an intelligent woman, and I think you have to look by a case basis. And I think that when she said, "Hey, these people are going to prison for the crimes they committed," I believe that she did it the most logical way she could do it.
Has Kamala Harris ever tweeted out white power, to your knowledge?
No, but remember that when it comes to the Democratic Party, there are numerous things that they claim as racism.
I'm just asking about the one specifically.
Okay. No, she has not. But
has she ever?
Trump, I agree with you.
Has she ever failed to condemn white supremacy, to your knowledge?
Not that I know of, but I doubt that that's going to be an issue. I believe that she probably has. But I will say this, continuing on again, if you look at the Charlottesville, he condemned the white supremacists. He said it's not the white supremacists. There are numerous times in his 40 years where the media kept on asking him, and he said, no, I condemn white supremacists. And I think you saw that again when it comes to the debate with the moderator, with Chris Wallace, where they were asked to denounce white supremacists, and he kind of got frustrated and says, again, what do you fine? What do you guys want me to say?
Let me ask you one last thing about Charlottesville, and then we'll jump off of here.
Okay,
so I agree with you that he condemned the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis at Charlottesville. My problem is that he didn't condemn any of the people that associated with them. They were all very fine people. Can you see why I have a problem with that?
I think I can see why, but I disagree with the reason why. Once again, I think truth is truth, no matter who says it. I think that someone can be fighting
What truths were the neo-Nazis and the people that associated with the neo-Nazis speaking?
The dismantling of America's history when it comes to the removal of the Confederate statues. I think that the city has more of a say in who they want to promote when it comes to those statues than the federal government. I understand that as African American,
the city was who was taking it down.
No, but was that decision by the city done through a democratic process?
The city council.
The city choosing to do that. Okay, so if that's the case, then 100%. But then 100%, then the city should be taken down. But it does not denounce the fact that you're trying to paint everyone with the same brush.
No, I'm not. I'm specifically, like I said, if you associate with neo-Nazis and hang out at the same protest as them, then again, we're not talking about 10 guys in a hood here, right? We're talking about a rally that they organized. Richard Spencer, the former leader of the neo-Nazi movement in the United States, was one of the organizers of this thing. Okay. If you're hanging out with that crowd, that's a problem. How many openly racist Klan member friends do you have?
Not that I know of. No,
how many openly neo-Nazi members, card-carrying members do you have?
None that I know of.
How many have you personally hung out with?
Oh, dude, probably zero that I know of. But coming from Texas,
how many have?
People that I've talked
to. I agree with you. There's probably a few that we've all both hung out with unaware, right? Yeah. But why are you holding? Or okay, well, how many protests have you attended with neo-Nazis and Klansmen personally?
Oh, zero.
Okay.
But I honestly have never attended a protest, though.
Fair enough.
But I do see the point you're making. I see the point that you're trying to make. So
okay. On that note, we're going to have to agree to disagree here, and I appreciate your call. You are welcome to call back in anytime.
100%. I appreciate you. Hey, keep on doing a good job, man. Even though I'm on the right, I do like your show, and I do believe that you bring up logical defenses for your viewpoint. And I appreciate the opportunity to call into your show and have this dialogue with you.
I appreciate you calling in. You are more than welcome anytime. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Fisty, you hadn't seen that clip before? Yeah, it is a crazy clip. Did he denounce white supremacists back in 2016? He may have. The problem I have is that he goes back and forth with where he's comfortable and where he's not. If you are somebody who believes race is a very big thing, like you think white people are being genocided in this country, which is a talking point of the alt-right, yeah, then you can find stuff Trump's going to say to support that. If you think Trump is not racist, then you can find the thing a day or two later that he says where he goes, oops, my bad. I have never had an oops, my bad moment about calling neo-Nazis bad people. I have never accidentally tweeted or posted white power anything. That's my own personal standard. I don't associate with Nazis and Klansmen. I think it's fair in that particular thing for me to hold my president to the same standard since he's supposed to represent all of us. that one clip is kind of sketch. We actually did an intro a little while ago on an episode where we jumped entirely into Trump's racist and white supremacy stuff. We'll watch that real quick. It's going to show some clips and stuff like that. Fisty, the number's toll free. You may want to wait till after the clip so you can hear it. But yeah, you're more than welcome to call in, brother. The time for silence is over.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
I came here to speak on behalf of Donald Trump.
Do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them, what do you want to call them? Very fine people on both sides.
And for the white Christian people of this nation.
Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
white
supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by.
In fourth degree, you get arrested or in a serious violent fight for the cause.
Really?
Yes. I'm taking the low road. I'm punching them in the face.
So that.
I attacked a couple guys. Very fine people on both sides.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
So I punched him in the face and I ripped his mask off. And then I punched him again.
President Trump retweeted a video showing a supporter making a racist statement.
White power! White power!
Very fine people on both sides.
Did Hitler do anything wrong? No!
Fuck him!
Reset of the truth of right. Remember it. Gas the guys right
Let's have trial by combat.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists, right
Proud
militia?
Boys, stand back and stand by. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Join me every Sunday afternoon. Charlottesville Unite the Right was not a conservative, hey, everybody, come on down, let's protest the removal of this statue. That's not what we're talking about here. Like I said, if you got out of your car because you thought that's what it was, and you saw that, I don't know anybody that I consider a good person or a fine person who is staying for that. This was all available information at the time. Remember, this was not Trump's initial reaction. This was his, I believe it was 3 days later reaction, where he called these people very fine people. Think we got a caller calling in. It's probably Fisty, so we'll give him a second. It's screening the call now. I've got 50 Michigan. I'm assuming that's Fisty talks about the acquittal. Caller, you are on the air. Can you hear me? There we go.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry. Yeah, I was just laughing at 50.
Yeah, no problem. It's the auto decipher, I'm sure.
All right. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the show. What do you have to say?
So first of all, I want to say I don't necessarily. We're not on the same political spectrum. You're left, I'm more right. But what I want to talk about more so, and civilly, like you have been, of course, which is great. And I love to see this.
Absolutely. I think both sides should be able to agree to disagree on some things, and I think other things should be non-negotiable. So what did you want to talk about?
Trump's acquittal, and would double jeopardy apply to that situation because he got tried for impeachment twice, right?
Correct, for two separate things.
For two separate things. Okay, so double jeopardy is not relevant in this then. Okay, cool. But so with the acquittal, what's your take on that? Because I think that shows that, for the last 4 years, there's been kind of like almost a witch hunt. I know you can, cherry pick things out of here and there, and we all do it, right? But, do you think instead of like a negative about Trump, do you think you'd give me a positive that he did during his presidency?
Just a single positive Trump did during his presidency?
Single positive, multiple, it your choice. It's your show. Whatever you want to touch on. Because I'm trying to ask you this question so I can understand more so where you're sitting and understand your viewpoint a little more.
No, yeah, that's certainly fair. A single positive out of Trump's campaign, I think he... Okay, so I'll give you a positive from my point of view, and then I'll give a positive from what I think is from a conservative's point of view, because I used to be conservative, so I'll differentiate between the two. From my current, where I stand right now, I think he unmasked a lot of what had been kind of not said out loud on the conservative side of things. It's a whole lot harder to, say, oh, we're not, supporting racist policies when you have a president who's tweeting out white power. So that would be where I'm currently sitting. From a conservative standpoint and what I used to believe and be okay with, I think he made, in the eyes of a lot of conservatives, being proud of your country, like, waving the flag and, being proud of, being a Trump supporter. I think he made that okay. I think he made that more acceptable again.
Okay, so all right. That was an interesting positive. I wasn't expecting that one. And so the positive from a conservative standpoint was he made being a Trump supporter okay.
Yeah,
so,
because you never saw people, driving around with George W. Bush banners off the back of their truck, and a lot of people in this country, I would say, had a feeling that, it was somehow wrong to be a patriot or proud of being an American, or they felt like it was wrong. I mean, I saw a thing going around Facebook. I don't know how much you're on social media. That's like, I'm proud to be American, repost this. Most of you won't because you'll be afraid of being called a racist, right? To me, that has nothing to do with racist, but it's circling around all of my old friends in Louisiana and Texas. That he made it okay to be proud of your country again for a lot of people. I think that's fair.
Okay. So let's run with that point for a moment, if we can. So overall, is being proud of your country necessarily a bad thing?
No.
Like, is it an implicitly negative thing? Excuse me.
No, not remotely. I'm proud to be an American. I serve this country. I've lived all over it.
Right. And I can say I know what you're talking about with the Louisiana and Texas. I used to live in just even northern Louisiana, where it's not even so crazy, but you still see some things go on. That's like, what the hell? Excuse me. Sorry, I have a problem with cussing. I apologize.
No, you're fine. So do I.
So awesome. That works out then. So with the race, with the positives of his presidency, would you say that like the highest female unemployment rate, not just for females in general, but also like black females being at an all-time low was a positive, and like black home ownership being a positive?
Sure.
Being at an all-time high.
Yeah.
But so, okay. And you said something that also kind of, which ties into this, we're talking about racist policies, and, Trump supporters saying they don't support racist policies. But then, excuse me, we have that tweet.
So let me clarify for you real quick.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I stated it previously, but you may have missed it, I don't think all Trump supporters are racist, not remotely. I think Trump can talk to his racist base, and then the people in Trump's party or that are Trump supporters that are not racist find a way to excuse it. I think that's the difference.
So I will tell you this, as someone who voted for Trump in 2016, I didn't vote in this past election. Nobody interested me. I did vote, but it was for myself.
Oh, fair enough. Congratulations. You got one more vote for president than I probably got.
Thank you. I still support Trump as a person. And I think, he was a strong president in the sense of, he said what a lot of people were thinking, whether or not he said those things the correct way or said them the wrong way. That's, kind of neither here nor there. He was strong in what he was saying. And I feel like a lot of presidents have been kind of like, beat around the bush type, little, let me daintily lift up my teacup instead of, oh, here's my pint glass, let me slam it down because I chugged it,
Yeah.
And I felt that was amazing, and I felt we needed someone strong. But I don't stand for racism or anything like that. And anybody that told me they were a Trump supporter and were racist, I kind of just discounted them, because that's how I treat any racist in general, really. Is just if they say something stupid, you don't exist anymore. And I think Morgan Freeman said it best. The best way to get rid of racism is to stop talking about it. Don't not talk about history, but just quit talking about racism, because then it's not prevalent in everyone's mind. And, and I'm kind of going to racism because I feel like that's what the stream's kind of gone to instead of the acquittal.
No, I agree, and we can jump back to the acquittal in a second. I will touch on your Morgan Freeman point. I fundamentally disagree with Morgan Freeman on that point. In the United States, people being quiet has never made racism go away. It was the abolitionist. It was Harry Beecher Stowe writing Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was the entire Republican Party founding around abolition that ultimately, caused the end of slavery in the United States. Of course, we fought a big war about it. It was Martin Luther King.
Right.
It was Malcolm X, and it was Rosa Parks, and it was everybody in the civil rights movement who would not shut up, who would not sit down in the background, that ultimately got Jim Crow dismantled in the South. Being quiet about racism has never made it go away. Not once in this country. What it does is let the racist stuff keep going. So no, I fundamentally disagree with Morgan Freeman on that point, that just being quiet about it will make it go away.
So I understand, with the references you were giving, those were the things then. But like in modern days where it's not really that much of a fight like it was back then. It's not as big of a fight per se. It's still a big fight. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like nobody's in chains per se anymore. Nobody's like really. Nobody's actually enslaved now. So in modern day, that's where Morgan Freeman was coming from, because that was the question. How do we stop racism today?
Okay, so I'm going to pause you again for a second. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you think the civil rights movement was a good thing in this country? Just yes or no?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Nobody was in chains during the civil rights movement. Nobody was enslaved during the civil rights movement. So by the logic you just gave me, all of those people should have sat down, shut up, and been quiet because they weren't in chains and they weren't enslaved.
But why did that civil rights movement pop up? Because of the segregation and
that's
division,
not in
right,
chains and that's not enslaved.
In a sense, it kind of was, because they couldn't go freely about, and neither could slaves.
That's still not in chains and it's not enslaved. They were not the property of other human beings. Now, if you're saying that there were injustices during the civil rights movement based on race that these people were justified in speaking up against, I agree with you, which is also why I disagree with Morgan Freeman. There are currently racial injustices in our country, and you have a right to speak out against those racial injustices.
Right. And I'm not saying that at all. Speak out against racial injustices, for sure.
Okay, so you disagree with Morgan Freeman that we should be quiet about racism then?
In the way you're phrasing it, yes. Do I think that talking about racism in the way that racism has been talked about, where, like Conundrum said, if you keep saying things are racist, then racist loses that edge. Racist loses the actual poignancy of the word.
Right, but if I've got, let's just ignore excuses here for a second, okay? Excusing the individual actions. If I can't call the ability or the inability to condemn white supremacists and white nationalists a racist thing, if I can't call somebody tweeting out white power a racist thing, if I can't call out somebody tweeting out neo-Nazis and the people around them, very fine people, a racist thing, what point do we have to get back to? I mean, do they have to be in chains and enslaved again before I can call something racist? Where's the line?
No, you can call something racist, right? But I think it's more so the idea of focusing, harping on it. And so, I said earlier in the chat, sorry, let me scroll up in the chat.
No, you're fine.
I want to make sure I say it right. Okay, so when I asked you about do you think racial equality will ever be that way, in regards to perfect, obviously the answer is going to be no to that. But then I asked a secondary question, especially when identity politics are seemingly causing a race problem. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean it's causing an issue with racism. Like racism isn't becoming more rampant because of it. But what I'm trying to mean by that is, if we're going to go for racial equality,
okay,
we can't really start saying one race bad, another race better, and that's been going on, right? That's been going on, and I've seen more white people bad stuff than black people bad or Latino people bad or anything stuff like that recently. But maybe that's just me, the sources I'm on. But I mean, that's kind of that seems like a problematic to want equality, but then be at the same time,
Can you give me an example of some white people bad stuff you've seen? Just one or two, because I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
So, for me, I find that, and these are YouTube videos that I've seen. Let me get my.
Yeah, you don't have to give me the link, just like a quick quote or something, or a meme that stuck in your head or something like that.
So basically, it's okay. It's okay to be racist towards white people now. Reverse racism is a thing, right?
Okay,
and
can you give me a specific example? Because it's hard for me to address broad claims. If I just say Trump's a racist, right, then y'all want specific examples. So that's what I'm asking you for back, right? I give you 4 or 5 examples of, racist things Trump has said or done.
Right. So Excuse me. Let me get a drink real quick.
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So, in terms of the reverse racism, you can look towards, like, for example, there are a lot of people that think just because you're white, you're racist. That's the white people bad mindset, and it actually permeates more than people think.
Okay, well,
Like,
I don't.
I've had more
Are you white?
racist experience. Yeah, I am, and I've had more racist experiences with, like, black people calling me things like cracker, tackhead, and I suffer from male pattern baldness. There's nothing I can do about it.
How many times have you been called cracker in the last month? I'm just curious.
10.
10? Really? Wow, I don't think I've been called cracker in probably 15, 20 years, brother. Maybe you need to hang out with some better people.
It's insane, man. Oh, it's just my comings and goings, man. It's just comings and goings. But see, also too, like, if you're having a conversation and you're more conservative, you're also automatically labeled a racist now, and especially if you're a white conservative.
No, I can agree with that. I can.
And
I think the default assumption for a lot of people is that if you're walking around in Trump gear, right? I'm just going to use that as the most recent example of, easily identifiable conservative, that you are either a racist yourself or you are okay associating with racist if it furthers your political views. I think that's a default assumption from a lot of people on the progressive or left side.
Yeah, and I mean, so saying progressive after hearing that statement, is that very progressive though? Like, because that's always been my thing. Like, the left wants to talk about progression, but then it seems like in a lot of places with left policies, like, I live in Michigan, and it's a Democratic state.
Yeah.
Has been for a while. Trump, won in 2016 on a chin hair, but
yeah,
we're not doing great.
I think a lot of the old industrial belt is not doing great. I would agree with that.
It's not so much the fact that it's the old industrial belt. It's the Democratic policies and stuff that have come into play, right?
It's the Democratic policies. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the industrial belt, Michigan, was like cranking back in the 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah, all the way into the 80s.
Okay, so back when you had, 91% tax rates on the top 1% in this country, back when you had strong unions, back before we started cutting taxes on the super wealthy and letting jobs go everywhere and everything was a neoliberal policy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not like a dyed-in-the-blue Democrat. I'm a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren type Democrat, right? So I think we need to get back to having a true labor type party. I mean, that's where I think we need to get to, which would bring back those types of jobs. And if you're going to end up automating everything, then I think we need an extremely strong safety net. Now, let me ask you a hypothetical.
I mean, $15 an hour doesn't apply.
I think it needs to be stronger than that. If you go over to Denmark, you're looking at $22 an hour minimum wage, and that's with their health care already provided, their college tuition already provided. I mean, there are a lot of countries doing a lot better than us in a lot of areas. And I think we can learn and steal those ideas.
On that,
okay, so let's just apply it to your state, brother.
I see your point, but 1.4 million jobs lost does not. It's a net loss compared to 900,000 people that are going to benefit from that $15 an hour. And overall, it's going to be an even bigger net loss because that $15 an hour is going to create a huge amount of inflation, which will then just put the livable wage back at where it was, seemingly nothing.
Inflation happens regardless, but let's not derail the conversation entirely, because I think we're getting down a rabbit track here. Right. Let me ask you a hypothetical from my side, just based off the things I've looked at, can you understand why I would think Trump holds some bigoted / racist views?
I could understand why that would be in the back of your mind, yes.
Okay, can you understand why I would think that pretty strongly? I'm not saying you agree with it. I'm just saying from my side, could you understand why I would think that pretty strongly?
Yes, I can understand why you would think that.
Okay, so if I think, hypothetically, you as me, that Trump is a racist and that this should be common knowledge to everybody because you can see this stuff everywhere, right? Can you see why I would think those two things?
Yes, I can understand why you would think those two things. Yes.
So when you run into somebody on the progressive side of things that isn't as understanding, forgiving, whatever words you want to use, and you're wearing your Trump gear, okay, those two things are the reasons why they assume you're either a racist or you're okay with racist stuff. And I'm going to make an absurd illustration here to illustrate the point, because you may not agree with Trump's racist stuff, but we both acknowledge that he's made some racist statements. And from my point of view, you can understand why I think he would be. Okay. I'm sure there were plenty of Nazis who didn't agree with Hitler on the Jewish thing, and they voted for him for his economics. Okay. The problem is the Jewish thing comes in with it. The problem with Trump is the racist thing comes in with it. Now, do I think Trump's like the equal of Hitler? No, I'm using that to illustrate the point. Okay. That's why a lot of people assume you are okay with this, or that you are a racist yourself. And that's why they have a serious issue with it.
Understandable. But so what I like to look at is the individual, right? Like, sure. And we are looking at the individual of Trump, right?
Sure.
But I think if we're going to label someone or even assume something like that, we should at least, before we give that final judgment on that assumption, have some kind of, because, we can get fed all sorts of information all day long, and our brains will never know what's right, what's wrong, unless we, research until we're blue in the face, right?
Yeah, rely on evidence would be how I would phrase that.
Yeah, we need to rely on evidence, but I also feel like you need a personal interaction with someone to really find out what they're truly like, because especially if they're in the spotlight, they can be one way and be another way behind closed doors.
Have you ever had a personal interaction? So I'm going to disagree with you there. Have you ever had a personal interaction with Adolf Hitler?
No.
Do you think Adolf Hitler was a friend to Jewish people?
No.
Okay, but you never had a personal interaction with him, so how can you possibly know that?
Oh, the 6 million dead Jews?
Okay, so I don't need a personal interaction.
Eradicate them?
So I don't need a personal interaction with somebody to formulate an opinion about them. I can look at the evidence.
Right.
Okay, I'm doing the same thing with Trump.
But before you, actually can go ahead and make that 100% distinction that, yes, they're a racist, unless you have, like we said, empirical evidence, right? Like, so 6 million Jews and a whole campaign against the Jews. That's a whole lot of evidence to, proclaim Hitler as,
I would agree, but I can also look at his speeches before that, the book he wrote, all of his words before he ever got to that point, and establish that he was an anti-Semite, right? I can ignore.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. So I can do the same thing with other people. That's my only point. I don't need to wait till there are bodies to establish whether or not somebody has some racist problems. Now, you may disagree with my evidence, right? You may find different evidence,
Fair enough.
But I'm fundamentally disagreeing with you that I can't form an opinion on somebody about a particular issue without personally meeting them. That's because if we can't even agree on that, then there's, I don't see where we go.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we could agree to disagree on that, but for the sake of conversation,
hold on just a second. Granny, the video I played, if you're talking about the intro trailer, you can go to the YouTube site. It should be, I believe, the last intro trailer. If it's not up right now, it'll be up next week. Okay, go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
No, you're good. So for sake of argument, okay, sure. We'll agree that you can formulate an opinion that someone's no good without having a personal interaction.
Yeah, on a particular issue. Like I said, I'm not trying to make some universal judgment here.
Right. So, with that being said, I mean, so let me like I gave the example in the chat. I went to a protest just to document and ask questions about the beliefs that the people who believe that the concentration or the border camps are concentration camps. Excuse me.
Okay.
And I got called a racist and shouted down. Granny's actually seen the video. It was insane, and I was just really going to understand the viewpoint. Because that's one thing I really like to do, especially with like political beliefs, is try and understand the viewpoint.
Yeah, certainly. I do the same thing. I understand. Now, let me ask you a question, though, so I can kind of get some context for this. When you went to go do your video, were you like dressed like me in non-political gear, or were you decked out with like all the Trump stuff?
No, I don't wear any Trump clothes or anything like that, just to avoid the bullshit.
Okay, fair enough.
You know, I was dressed in like a button-up shirt and some khaki shorts.
Okay.
And sneakers. So
you were dressed up like a off-duty reporter type thing.
Yeah, and my bald head was exposed because it was hot and I didn't want to wear my hat. You know, so I got called a skinhead, a racist, a Nazi, a fascist, all sorts of fun things. And none of those people know me, right? And the news was there, of course. And they called me a counter-protester. I wasn't even there to counter-protest. I was just there to ask questions. So now I'm under a light here in this state, you know, where I'm a pile of trash. And so I guess I'm coming from a personal thing where like you should have a personal interaction with someone. I guess that's why I'm more for that, because of that personal interaction.
I can understand that, but I mean, have you had any personal interactions with Donald J. Trump? Like you sat down with a man and had a drink and a beer?
No, and I can't make any personal deductions.
Did you vote for him in 2016?
Yes.
And you never had a beer with him?
No.
So you made
the fact that he was a businessman.
So you made a decision on his policies without any kind of personal interaction with the man.
Yeah, I made a decision on his policies.
Okay, so how is that any different than where I'm coming from?
Because they're the policies. They're policies put in place. They're not the man himself. I guess is the difference, the distinction.
Okay, so I have an issue with Trump's policy of tweeting white supremacist shit and being unable to denounce it.
And that's fair, and
okay.
You're allowed to have that belief, and I have no issue with you having that belief.
Okay, I mean, let me be very clear, and then I'll let you wrap up. Okay, yeah. I don't think that like Trump is some neo-Nazi Klansman going to secret rallies at night. I think he's probably a little bit of a bigot and holds some slightly racist stuff sometimes, right? For the most part, I think he just finds it useful. Those people vote. If you honestly think that, you know, black people are going to take over the country and like destroy white people and the white race and the white genocide's a real thing, if you honestly believe all that shit, you're very motivated to vote.
Never.
No, I'm not saying you personally, but I'm saying the hypothetical guy that believes that shit. I know. Yeah. They're going to show up to vote for the primary for dog catcher in their city, right? Nobody else is going to. So it makes sense to talk kind of to those people to get them to vote. The problem is they start getting elected, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens that, you know, think that Sandy Hook massacre is fake and that, you know, the California wildfires were, you know, created by Jewish space lasers, which I'm not making up. She did. Okay. And then when the rest of the party,
No, I know that's.
Well, here's the problem I have with where this is going. Okay, Congress didn't even vote to boot her out of Congress. They voted to make her not the head of the Committee for Education. Okay, 11 Republican congressmen voted to remove her from being on the Committee for Education. Call me crazy, but I think somebody who thinks Jewish space lasers are a real thing shouldn't be in Congress, much less leading a committee. Out of 210 Republican congresspeople, 11 voted to remove her. That's 5.5%. Okay? That means 94.5% are okay with Jewish space laser girl being a part of their party openly.
Right. So, okay. So with that being said about, pandering to the racists and stuff to get votes, what makes the Democrats pandering to minorities and people of color any different?
Give me a specific instance.
All right. I posted a quote in chat and I asked who said it. It says, well, I tell you what, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. Can you tell me who said that?
Yeah, that was Joe Biden on a predominantly black audience radio show or podcast, if I remember correctly, out of New York City, if I remember right.
Correct. So was he not playing then? Was he not playing and pandering then to the blacks?
I think he phrased it poorly. Yeah, you could say he was trying to market himself to the black audience. Certainly.
So I guess in a sense the same argument could be made for Trump when he was running for election and in the beginning of his presidency, we'll say.
So here's the difference. Okay. Trump is marketing, according to you, to white nationalists and white supremacists. Okay.
No, not according to me. That's
what you just asked me.
You said.
Okay. So
yeah, based on what you said.
Okay. Has Biden ever come out in support of black nationalism? Of kicking all the white people out of this country and putting only black people in charge? Of creating a black ethno-state? Because this is what we're comparing it to, right? We're talking about white supremacists, neo-Nazis, people who want to create a whites-only state ultimately, right? And are comfortable using violence to achieve that. Okay. So, and then you're asking me to compare that to a statement by Joe Biden saying, if you support the guy that's okay with all the white ethno-state stuff, then you're not black. Can you see why these two things aren't remotely on the same scale to me?
I guess where you're losing me now is the white ethno-state thing. I've never heard Trump talk about wanting a white ethno-state.
I didn't say Trump said that. I'm saying he's marketing to white supremacists, right? And that's what those people want.
According to your words, yes, he's marketing to those people.
Okay. So, like I said, if you put yourself in my position, can you see why those two things aren't remotely the same to me?
But they're both pandering is what I'm getting at. They're both playing to a certain crowd based on what you're saying. They're the exact same. They're the exact same in this argument.
How are they the exact same?
To a certain crowd.
I think they are both. We'll use your words. They're both pandering. We'll use your words. They're both pandering to a certain crowd. Are the crowds drastically different in what they are trying to achieve?
Yes, the crowds are drastically different.
Okay.
But the focus is
I am taking that into account. I am taking that into account when I consider who they're pandering to. If I go to Michigan and say, hey, you union guys, I'm going to be strong on unions, I'm pandering to the unions. That's not the same thing as me going to a Klan rally and saying, hey, you Klan people. So who I'm talking to matters. Who I'm marketing myself to matters. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, let me let you wrap up, and then we're gonna jump off. So last words, final statement.
So what I'll say is this: I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the conversation and the civil conversation at that. You're an educated guy. You got points to back up what you're saying. I really appreciate that. And I'm just going to do this right now because you deserve it.
I appreciate the follow.
I'll be around more because I love these conversations. And maybe one day I'll catch you in my stream. And listen, man, I really want to help you get to affiliate. So I'm going to try and get some people in here.
Hey, you are more than welcome. I'll also tell you, I appreciate your conversation being civil. I appreciate the fact that you had some sources and questions you brought up. With me specifically, if you can go to the webpage, it's just theleftspeaks.com. You can message me any sources you want to go over. If you want to go over stuff on live stream, that's more than welcome. I have to pre-vet it because I've had somebody send me some Daily Stormer and Nazi stuff, so I have to look at it beforehand now.
Oh, yeah.
But if there's a specific thing you want to go over or a specific question you want me to address, you're more than welcome to message it to me anytime, and then I'll go over it on the next show if I have the chance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No problem. Have a good one, man. You are welcome to call back in anytime.
You as well. Oh, watch out for Mystical Hedgehog. He's a troll.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate the heads up.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, whoops. I think I dropped you a little soon, but thank you for the call, brother. All right. So I've missed a little bit of chat. What about Trump's lawyer that got his house vandalized and death threats against him and his family? I'm against death threats and I'm against vandalization of houses. Integration certainly wasn't some egalitarian process, but blacks and whites lived in the same home. I think I'm a little bit out of the loop on that one. Conundrum looks like he's going on about the Democratic side. I am okay with Antifa, which is pro-Marx, and the implementation of Marxism. No. Antifa, anybody who shows up at a rally that opposes fascist is by definition anti-fascist. There's not some national leader. There's not some like ranks you can move up in Antifa. I mean, hell, if you want to go by the anti-fascist definition, all the soldiers, United States soldiers who landed on the beaches in Normandy back in World War II were anti-fascist. They certainly weren't all Marxist. So, no, I disagree fundamentally. Granny, I already addressed. Brevity. Antifa is simply anti-fascist. Yeah, I agree. Where did Marxism kill 100 million people? Conundrum lists off Ukraine under Lenin, Mao and his death camps, Pol Pot and Karl Marx. You can be in favor of like communism without being in favor of authoritarianism. I'm personally not a communist, but those two things are separate. Totalitarian and communist don't necessarily have to go together any more than capitalist and fascist. There are a lot of shades of gray here. Capitalism only sounds good on paper, but doesn't work in reality, from Mystical Hedgehog. And Mystical Hedgehog, who was that? That was Fisty. I think capitalism can apply to certain industries and situations. There are others where the model just does not fit worth a damn. If you have the time to make an informed, educated decision between products and the ability to make an informed, as you have access to multiple products, then I think capitalism can function, provided you have a decent safety net to keep people from starving to death. Do I think there are instances where capitalism gets broken or does not work? Absolutely. Fire departments is an easy example, right? Nobody makes informed, educated decisions on which fire department they're going to call when their house is burning down. They're not going to go cross-shop 5 different fire departments. So we got rid of for-profit fire departments for a reason. I would argue medicine falls under the same thing. If you're having a heart attack, you're not calling 5 different ERs, price shopping, and comparing which surgeon has the most stars on Yelp or on Google. So, but do I think that like eliminates all forms of capitalism? No, I think capitalism is good at driving innovation. I think capitalism is good at lowering prices when people have the option to cross shop. There's a fundamental difference between, you know, which set of Cheerios do I want to buy when I'm walking through the grocery store, and who do I want to operate on my heart. So what Allied researchers that injected pathogens into black soldiers during the Tuskegee syphilis experiments to investigate the virus technically been considered anti-fascist from Ironword. If they were against fascism, sure. I mean, that fascism answers like one thing on one point. It doesn't like encompass some kind of worldview that I'm aware of. You can have good and bad Antifa, would be my point. Lenin called people who espouse socialism without it leading to authoritarian communism useful idiots. Okay. Sure, Lenin can say that. I can fundamentally disagree with Lenin. The fact that, you know, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany, the United Kingdom, South Korea, Japan, etc., all have socialized medicine. Like what, 34 out of 35 democracies in this, you know, world, Canada, all have some form of socialized medicine, and none of them are Leninist, kind of proves my point and defeats yours. You're saying that all socialist policies have to go into Marxist, Leninist communism, authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and that's demonstrably false. Not saying you're an idiot, because obviously you are not. I appreciate that conundrum. Can we even define fascism? Because many would call Allied forces and the thinking of the time fascistic. Paleogenic ultranationalism. Basically, you're going to tie back into some form of race or blood. There was a time in the past when our people, us, whoever that us is defined as, were great. There's a distant time in our past where we were great. And we are going to get back to that. Because our country is the best. Nobody else is ever close to it. Nobody else can even come close to it. So you have to be loyal to our country above everything else. And the problems, we have to get back to some form of purity. That would be a fascist thing in a nutshell. That isn't how many define fascism. Umberto Eco would employ a different criteria. Umberto Eco points out, I believe it's 14 points that help you identify whether you're living in a fascist society or if a society is fascist. But paleogenic ultranationalism is the shortest definition of fascism I've seen. Very succinct. Now, there's plenty of other definitions you can go with. It's the real definition, just not the reactionary version you're used to. I'm not sure whether you're discussing with Ironword or you're discussing with me, Mystical. The United States is a fascist country. I disagree with that. Do I think there are some people who hold fascist views that live in the United States? Certainly. I don't think the entire country is fascist. And just an FYI, everybody, we are 13 minutes over my cutoff, and I have got to go take care of the kiddo and the girlfriend are going to need my attention. So we got about 5 minutes left, and then we'll run the exit video. Again, everybody, if you're enjoying the content, you are more than welcome to follow me. If there's anything you want to send me source material-wise, you can go to the website, www.theleftspeaks.com. You can email it to me. You can message it to me on Facebook, whatever source it is that you want. If I have the chance, I will run through it, and then we will address it next week. What Marx understood is that once people realize that people can vote for free things, their desire for those free things will not cease. As more free things are voted for, education, healthcare, universal basic income, it will require more taxation and the destruction of the bourgeoisie. This will cause the conflict that Marx called for and will eventually lead to Marxist utopia Karl Marx called for. Again, 34 out of 35 democracies in the world have universal socialized healthcare. We're the one without. So I don't know what kind of timeline you're looking at. But they're existing just fine. And communism as an economic system is separate from authoritarian, totalitarian, we're going to crush everything underneath us states. Those two things do not necessarily have to go together. You can vote to entirely get rid of capitalism and still not be an authoritarian state. You could have one where it's, you know, everybody votes on whatever programs all the time. And by definition, that's not totalitarian. What else do you label a country that has concentration camps as? Germany, prior to Hitler's rise to power, had concentration camps under the Weimar Republic. Under the, I believe it was Social Democrat administration that later got shut down. Like I said, you can have fascist individuals and you can have some fascist policies without being a fascist state. Do I think the camps on the border with the kids in the cages need to go away, be resolved? Absolutely. Needs to be resolved yesterday, 2 years ago? Yes, absolutely. Do not mistake my position. Do I think that one individual thing is going to make you a fascist state? No, I do not. That is what Venezuela did in 1992. They voted in a communist, but it has since turned into a totalitarian state. I do not disagree. However, it does absolutely nothing to address the other 34 countries I have pointed out. Show me where Canada has become a totalitarian state. Show me where Denmark has become a totalitarian state. Again, you can point to tons of examples where it has happened. I am pointing to lots of examples where it has not. You are acting as if it is an absolute, whereas it has to happen. You're committing what's called a black swan fallacy. I've never seen a black swan, therefore it can't exist. In this case, it's even worse. We have plenty of black swans, right? You have plenty of states that have not become totalitarian states that have some more socialist policies than we do. You don't get to ignore those. It's confirmation bias. So basically, you need utopian cosmopolitans to show the right, the template of fascism. Ironword, I'm not sure who you're referring to, so I don't know exactly how to address that. I'm not sure if there's a question in there somewhere. If you're referring to me, I don't think I'm a utopian or a cosmopolitan. I mean, I guess I do live in a big city now, but I grew up in a small town with one stoplight and a corner grocery store that was also the butcher shop and everything else. Your argument that it hasn't happened yet does not mean that Marx is wrong. I can argue that every one of these countries are following the trends. They are becoming more and more socialist, which shows that they are going down the path from conundrum. Yes, you can. But it hasn't happened yet, and you cannot prove that it will. Again, if we can imagine a society where everybody votes on everybody getting everything for free, and there's not a single person in charge, it's not a totalitarian, authoritarian state. And since I can imagine that reality, we'll pretend none of the other ones exist. That the other 34 democracies that have more socialist tendencies than we do, we'll pretend none of them exist. It's still a black swan fallacy. The only swans I've seen are white. Therefore, a black swan can't exist. Until we went to Australia and saw a black one. The only communist governments we've seen all go authoritarian, all go totalitarian, therefore one that doesn't can't exist. It's the same argument you're making, and it's a fallacy for a reason. You can't prove it. And like I said, that's even ignoring the other 34 examples I've provided you with. So you can't prove you're right. You need to go back and find a way to prove that you're correct. Oh, my Weimar example? My Weimar example is that the Social Democrats back there made a mistake And then somebody came in, another, I think it was a social democrat. It may have been a communist. Don't hold me to it. It's been a while. But it was a female member of their Reichstag came in and inspected the camps. I think it was 2 years later, and said, hey, you know, these conditions are shit and this is a problem. And then there was a big hubbub in the Reichstag about it, with them all losing their minds and saying, you know, fighting back and forth over whether it was a good thing or whether it was a bad thing and whether it needed to be done or not. And ultimately the camps were disbanded, right? They got rid of them. And then the Nazis came in several years later and built them back up, and we know what happened there. So yeah, I think they need to be disbanded. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But again, one thing doesn't make everything else true. All right, guys, 5 more minutes. Get it in. And again, if you haven't followed, I appreciate it. And for the next show, because we're wrapping up for today, everybody is always more than welcome to call in. The number is toll free. There are 5 to 10 open lines at any given time. If you're on hold, you still hear the audio, so you can still hear what is being said. And you are more than welcome to call in. Also, if you happen to agree with me, and your, you know, conservative crazy uncle does not, he is more than welcome to call in. I'm not trying to duck any arguments here. If I'm wrong, I want to know it. And we should all be able to talk back and forth in pursuit of truth and pursuit of fact, because that makes our country better. Conundrum, I appreciate you dropping by. I'm not going to agree with the hook 'em horns. Go LSU, baby. All right, chat seems to have died down for a minute. So on this note, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. For all you Trump supporters out there, I hope you can take a joke. For all the rest of you, enjoy the song. Have a good day, everybody. See you next Sunday. The time for silence is over.
Bye-bye, Donnie, your time is up, so you can take your lies and you can go get fucked. The people spoke and they spoke by mail, so pack your shit, cause it's time to bail. Sorry, buddy, but you lost it, mate, and like everything true, you'll call it fake. But who'd have thought you'd be such a wussy when America grabbed you by the pussy and threw you out after just one term, cause they finally realised that you're a germ. And COVID's not the only thing you spread, like lies, fear, hate, confusion and dread. And you told your own voters not to vote by mail in a global pandemic, and that was your fail. So shut up, Donnie, and practice what you preach. Have some dignity and give your concession speech. Just tell everyone it's a conspiracy. Blame your fall on American democracy. Make up excuses and a million reasons from your shitty press conference at the Four Seasons. Get out there and go tell more lies. Do what you do best and propagandize. No one's expecting you to be apologetic, but let me explain it using your logic. See, you find more COVID when you do more tests, and you find more results when more votes get read. It's crazy, but that's how counting works. I can show you if you want to share your tax returns. You'll be fine, old mate. You survived impeachment. You survived coronavirus by injecting disinfectant. You've had 6 bankruptcies and 2 divorces, 200 days of tax paid golf and golf courses. You survived the guilt of putting kids in cages and 26 sexual misconduct accusations. You've only got like 4,000 active lawsuits, so man up, Donnie, and hang up the boots. Fake news, fake hair, fake tan, fake smiles, fake offshore accounts in the Cayman Isles. You're a fake president with a fake first lady who's gonna take half of your fake ass money. And you finally succeeded in building your wall around the White House, and it's 10 feet tall. For someone who hates lockdown as much as you do, you were quick to lock yourself down in there, dude. Fake friends who used you to climb the ladder, and fake everything else that no longer matters. Fake supporters who piss on homeless people. You're the sworn enemy of the American eagle, cause you tried to fool the world with no regret, and you're in $900 million debt. On the down low, if you know what I mean, like your old mate, Jeffrey Epstein. Nah, you'll be fine, you've told 20,000 lies and 230,000 people have died, just like Daddy's money gave you your start. Daddy Bannon will give you a job at Breitbart, cause no one believes your bullshit rules, cause you're doing what you said you'd do when you lose. So see ya, buddy, you gave it a crack, and now even Fox News hasn't got your back. So sorry, old chum, but you're out of tricks, and you can suck 75 million dicks. The people voted someone else was hired, so sorry to say it, cunt, but you're fired.
Join me every every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition.